Well, welcome back, everyone. I have the great pleasure of having on Wendi Ray on the show today, someone who I've met through LinkedIn, which, as we can talk about later, is a great source, especially for transitioning veterans. As most of you who have transitioned out or will transition out, one of the first things you get when you're in the TAP classes is sign up for LinkedIn, do the premium account. So you will find a lot of veterans on there who are looking for assistance, looking for work, or veterans who are looking to hire or give them some advice. So Wendi, thank you for coming on my show. I truly appreciate it and having you on.
Joe, thank you for inviting me. And I'm just super excited to talk to you about all things military transition and also, any tips and tricks that will help you along the way and help your audience as well. I mean, you mentioned LinkedIn, and before we started recording, we talked about the power of LinkedIn. And I just want to say something really quickly before I forget. Mm-hmm. If you are serious about your transition and you have a minimum of 12 months, because that's what you get a free 12-month membership for the LinkedIn, for your LinkedIn profile. Use it when you are ready to get serious. Don't use it 24 months out, 3 years out, or 12 months out, but you're not serious because you're in command or in, a very time needed position that it's required from you, and you can't put any attention to LinkedIn because it is a powerful networking tool that if you're not on it now, I need you to run to your app store. And by that, I mean with your thumb and go and download the app, because you will meet people there and you never know. It's just super powerful. And I'm sure, Joe, I see you nodding your head, and it's one of the social media that I think is going to continue to benefit many of us, not only veterans, but also our spouses. And so again, highly encourage that you do that at this moment.
Yeah, no, that's 100%. And just before I get started on you and your background, to double down on LinkedIn, that is, as I've been trying to build my network, as I've been trying to reach out to people, even talk on this podcast, the reception I get messaging through LinkedIn is generally a lot better because they know I'm like a real person. I'm not a bot trying to do a scam on someone with some fake name.
Right. Yeah.
It's pretty legitimate, and it's a great place to meet veterans. And so Wendi, just tell me who you are, a little bit about yourself, what you do.
Yeah, so I'm actually a Army woman veteran, and I actually have 3 kids now. So I'm a mom, a wife, and I'm also a podcast host of Beyond the Military podcast. Now, I've been really intrigued from the very beginning of how to connect with people just by the whole audio or radio type of kind of environment. That's kind of how I began the podcast. And so the first podcast that I remember listening to was a self-help podcast. But then there was Amanda Huffman's podcast. And that really just ignited me to create this podcast because I needed to help women one way or another. And so this whole life coaching, self-help started way back in 2015. And I'm like, I'm going to be a life coach one day. And I didn't know really what a life coach even meant, or a career coach. But at that time, I knew I needed to do something similar, and more specifically with women. And so all of that started in 2017 when I had my own coach. She completely changed my life on how I was thinking, how I was feeling, dealing with all those negative emotions at the perfect time, because I was actually transitioning out of the military. And so with all of that said, I was completely lost in my career, in my life. I had no idea what I wanted to do. At the time, we had 2 kids. But I also wanted to just do better as an individual, as a woman, as a wife, as a mom, and just everything, right? My career. And so that's where this passion and, just all of this information of how can I be a life coach? How can I, tell people what they, need to know in order for them to start taking small steps into their own growth. And so that's how it all started for me. It was just through self-help, listening to other people's podcasts. Um, and this is where I'm at now. I am not only doing a podcast every week, I'm helping other women with their transition, with their life, more specifically with their confidence, because I think that that's like the biggest piece. And that also involves military spouses. And so I think the only branch that I haven't touched right now is the Coast Guard, but I am eager to learn more about the Coast Guard and kind of like what they're doing. So if you're in the Coast Guard, you're a veteran or a spouse, please reach out to me just by saying hello on LinkedIn. Again, Wendi Ray, and that's Wendi, last name Wray. Just because I want to connect more with Coast Guard women specifically, but if you're a spouse or just in the Coast Guard, please send me a message, and I would love to learn more about how everything is done there too. But yeah, so now I'm also working in corporate as a global program and project manager. And that's also another reason why I love helping veterans, because I want them to see the opportunities that are out there for everyone. I mean, I don't care what rank you were, what degree you have, the opportunities are endless, especially during this time.
Yeah, no, for sure. And, I'll definitely will put all of your links into the description because, you have your own website, and, I saw your Instagram, Pinterest, your podcast, obviously, and link and all the other, your total website overall. It talks about booking consultations, everything. So you have you have it all out there in a great resource. And I'll be sure to put that out there. So can you tell me, you said specifically women, what challenges are you seeing that a lot of women are facing coming out of the military and trying to find employment?
Confidence. So the confidence is there. We have a lot of confidence, and I think everyone. I think this is just everyone in general. But what I found with women specifically, we don't understand how to cut the noise down a little bit when it comes to self doubt. And this is what I mean. A lot of women are in these leadership roles. They are either a senior non-commissioned officer, or they're, a brand new sergeant that has been in, for 4 or 5 years, or maybe even in command. They've been in command. They are now, they're like, I'm not going to do the whole major and lieutenant colonel thing. I'm just going to get out now. And they have a bachelor's degree, or even, whatever degree they have, or they're working towards a degree. When it comes time to even considering, we're not even applying yet. They don't want to do so because they don't believe that they're able to do that job. And now it's not everyone, of course, but for the most part, the underlying thing that's holding them back is the self-doubt. And we don't talk about this much because in the military, it's more so of like, congratulations, Specialist Ray, you've been promoted to sergeant. You went to the board, you got your stripes, and now you are in this position. And also, for the most part, you get moved and you're now with a new team, a new group, and now you're in that position, right? And you're wearing it, and people can acknowledge you in that way. But in the civilian sector, there's no way to say that, hey, Joe, I'm in this leadership position, or I'm in a position with this level of authority. And so now we have to actually show up in that way. And so that's the difference. We don't know how to show up in that way because, one, we're wearing the rank, we have the title, we have the position. But then also, when we're working with others around us, most of our counterparts are men. And so we've already learned how to communicate with them as well. And so now when we get into the civilian sector, there are going to be more women. And so now, like, how do we show up? Like, we're not competitive. Or how do I show up and not be, this super rigid, NCO, especially my Marine females, right? They're like, well, we're going to do it or we're not going to get it done. There's no in between. And in the civilian sector, there is a lot of in between. There is a lot of, like, deadlines that are not met because of the nature of the beast, right? Like in the military, we can't miss movement. We can't miss certain deadlines. I mean, it's you can, but it's frowned upon. And
Yeah.
so we have this pressure. And then here's like the other thing, the next thing that comes with that. So it's the self-doubt, not knowing how to really, be as confident or show up as confident in that area. And then on top of that, we are now faced with the other challenges that come along. So, for example, if like someone's not feeling well or someone is struggling in an area. In the military, we're like, well, suck it up and let's just get to it. And in the civilian sector, we can't do that. Right? Like, we just can't start telling people what to do. We have to ask them. So then the communication part. So then again, that brings up a lot of self-doubt. Can I do this? Would I be able to, communicate with this other counterpart or with, this coworker about this? And so we do all of that even before we apply. So like we overthink a lot of things, even before we start looking at roles, which I find that pretty interesting. And the way that we figure that out, Joe, is because they haven't applied. They will wait to apply the very last minute, which is the third point that I want to touch on here. We are so trained to wait till the last minute to do certain things because we've built that habit of it was due yesterday, or we have to get that done last week because of everything else going on, that now we have this, we built this habit of just getting it done the closer we are to the deadline sometimes.
Gotcha.
And we get excited about that.
Yeah. No, I see what you mean. I mean, I could see the thrill of, we're working on a deadline and, this could have been done 2 weeks ago, but it's a lot more fun if we submit it the day before.
Like we can stay up.
Well, so let me ask you this. So for those of you who may not know who you are, and I know you have a very large following, you're airborne. So you confidence probably, or facing your fears and overcoming them is probably not much of an issue for you. Did you have the same level of confidence when you transitioned out because of maybe your military experience? Like or was this who you are? Like, so for example, as a service member, as we transition out and we go through these classes, we look through a hiring post and it's like, well, I meet these categories, but I'm not even sure where this is. So I'm not going to apply because I don't think I meet all the categories, maybe out of fear. Did you always have this confidence, or is this something you grew as you transitioned out and grew it yourself?
No. So I think we all have a certain level of confidence for everything that we do, right? I think Airborne's a great example. I had no confidence in what the heck I was doing.
Me neither.
I'm like, wait, you just said I have to do 5 steps before I even get to the door. And then when I get to the door, there's like an additional, chin to your chest and feet and knee. Like there's too many steps, right? So I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm not going to make it, right? So what do we do though? We practice on the actual ground, and we're like, okay, we're gonna get, if you remember, you get suited up and you get into the actual like reruns of like practicing to jump off something that's like, I don't know, 4 feet high, and you PLF on the floor and everything. So we all have a level of confidence in doing something. And the example that I also like to give to make it as simple as possible is, if you remember pouring your first glass of whatever, milk, juice when you were little. You probably don't remember, but if you go as far back, memories don't really capture as much, but you'll remember that it wasn't perfect, right? Maybe you spilled some water here or there. Maybe you spilled everything and you got in trouble, or, maybe you were at home by yourself and, you're like, oh, I'm gonna clean that up before my parents get here. But the more you did it, the better you got at pouring a glass of water or juice in the glass. Now, I'm pretty sure, Joe, I'm confident enough and trust you that You could be pouring a glass of water right now and it's completely great, right? Like you won't
Yeah.
see anything. I probably could do it with my toddler in one hand, phone on the
Yeah.
other, and still
Yes.
do it correctly because we've done it so much.
Yes.
And so when it comes to this new thing, right, of applying, like, what do you mean applying? All I have to do was take the ASVAB. And from there, I was given options, pick something, and I was about my business. But now as we're transitioning out, it's more, there's so many options. So what happens is that our brain now wants to protect us and keep us safe and only do it if we know and believe that we can actually follow through. Especially as military, we're all about to follow through.
Hmm.
And if we're like, we're hesitant. And here's the thing, men will apply even if it says project PMP required. You guys will still apply. You're like, oh, there's a chance.
Yeah.
For women, we're like, well, it says required. I don't have it yet. I'm working on it. But will I pass the test or will I take it? Will I pass? Like all these questions. Like we come up with 100 questions and then we're like, okay, let's go something else. And then we switch. Like, okay, maybe not project management. Let's start with, I don't know, being an assistant or something or whatever,
Hmm.
a project coordinator, which is fine.
Hmm.
But at the same time, we didn't even attempt, right? We didn't, and not every woman, again. But at the same time, for the most part, there are going to be little areas where, or scenarios where you're like, okay, I'm just not going to do it. And how do we know? Because you didn't take action. And so a little bit of like what you just asked me on how I got better or gain more confidence. I think since the very beginning, I've just been an individual that I was raised an only child, and I always just did it just because, I mean, nobody was around me to judge me, right? I didn't have a sibling making fun of me or
Yeah.
telling me not to do it. It was just me. So I always did something just to try it out. But as we get older and we have more things on the line, AKA a family, now I felt like all of the confidence that I had as a captain and, very, what do we call it? Top, top of, 10% officer.
Tip of the spear, top,
Yeah.
yeah, all that stuff, all those cool lines.
All these cool, phrases. And I'm like,
Yeah.
yeah, 82nd and
Yeah.
10th mountain,
Yeah.
um, 10th mountain and, all these other things. I have a master's degree, right?
Yeah.
Went out the window. I mean, completely out the window. Why? Because my brain was trying to protect me. Wendy, you have a family. Oh my gosh, what are you going to do now? And literally waited. My terminal leave started in November, waited until August of the same year,
Hmm.
September, October, 90 days before to even start looking for opportunities. Like nothing. I mean, I didn't start clearing or my packet, all of that stuff until then.
Hmm.
So now I'm like worried about clearing my VA benefits, all of these things. Thankfully my finances were in order at the time.
Hmm.
And I'm like, oh, imagine if that wasn't it. So, credit cards were paid. I'm like, I have a plan. I'm good. My husband was already out. We kind of have a plan. We own a home in Fayetteville. And then all of a sudden it hit me. And I'm like, oh my gosh, what's happening here? What am I doing? So all of that to say that I had to really step out of my comfort zone in a different area. So what I've learned to do with the coaching that I received from my coach at the time was to focus on what I wasn't doing. Why am I not doing it? So for those of you that are thinking about the transition, why haven't you made a decision? What's stopping you? And whatever it is, identify it and talk to your spouse or whomever is going to be a part of this journey because they need to know. And that's, the first thing. What's holding you back? Because you're not taking action. And I think most of the times you're like, oh, we're not taking action. It's okay. But at the end of the day, you're still making a decision of not taking any action. And we don't look at that because we're like, oh, what are we doing? Oh, we're going to PCS. We're going to do all of this and yada, yada, yada. But have you decided? And so now let's say that you have decided. You're like, okay, I'm going to transition. I'm going to, be out in a year. What are you doing now to help you in a year? You don't have to have it all figured out, but I want you to focus on what you're not doing, right? What could you be doing? Connecting, setting up your LinkedIn account, going to SFL Tap, all these little things are going to help you. And I want you to think about it as doing this whole exercise of putting a water in a cup, pouring a glass of water.
Mm-hmm.
And, what can you do? Okay, maybe I can start looking at certifications, start looking, maybe I need to finish my bachelor's degree. Maybe I need to reach out to Joe or Wendy and ask them a couple questions about, how it's been for them, other people that have done what you're going to do. And so if you're not doing that, then I want you to ask yourself why you're not doing it. What's holding you back? Because 99% of the time is the fear of something.
Yeah. Now, I would say it's pretty terrifying for most, right? We have this guaranteed check every month for serving. You get tax-free housing allowance, there's a food allowance, there's the healthcare, right? And so I think when you're coming up on that time of, oh no, what's now what? When it comes to realize that, and I felt that when I went through the TAP classes, and again, they're not like perfect for everyone. It's kind of a catch-all, right? Because it's so many people at different periods of their career getting out, whether it's a first-year private, 30-year colonel, or somebody who's unexpectedly getting separated for a medical board or something like that. So you may not even have been planning on it. But I felt that some of those classes, particularly the finance classes, and I think even the Department of Labor might have been one of the classes as well, where it talked about certifications and it talked about the LinkedIn, talked about networking, or something I wish I would have, I'm okay, but I wish I'd have maybe looked at that earlier. Whether or not I was going to get out or not, to just have that as something that I could think about, like, hey, like, it's cool that I have all this stuff, but if I want the career that I want on the outside, I need a certification. Or, does my experience translate to what I want to pursue on the outside? Because you hear it all the time, right? I'm sure you heard it. As soon as you get out, it'll be no problem. You have leadership experience, they'll hire you. Okay, well, like there's some steps in between there that need to happen. And so you touched on talking to like someone like yourself or myself or other people. Can you highlight your thoughts on like a veteran network or a network of people as you're in kind of reaching out and building that network of mentors, so to speak?
Yes. So I think, and the way I want to answer this is really just looking at who you are, right? Being honest. That's step number one. Not everyone will want to network. I've learned that too.
Mhm.
I'm big with meeting people. I'm big with saying yes to things like this. Joe, like, yes, sign me up. Like, I want to speak and share everything that I have to share. But then there will be others that are like more serious. I don't even say introverted, but just a person of few words, and maybe are also hesitant of asking for help because that's the way we see it. We're like, oh my gosh, networking, I'm going to be asking for help. What are they going to think of me? Or what do I ask? Right? We, again, get into our heads. A lot of us women do this. And we don't even want to go to events sometimes because we're like, what am I going to say? They're going to ask me that one famous question, right? That nobody wants to hear. What are you going to do when you get out? And they don't know.
Yeah.
So they're like, I'm going to go waste my time. It's going to be scary. And not in a way where it's like scary, where you're timid or anything of that sort. You just don't want to face that.
Mm-hmm.
And so again, we're going back to the inaction part. And so starting there, right? Be honest with who you are. Okay, I'm Wendy. I'm a little shy. I have no idea what I'm going to be doing. By the way, my husband and I are talking about starting a family. Do I really need help right now? I mean, connecting with somebody shouldn't be a good idea. So what then? Okay, I want you to start in baby steps. Like literally, if you don't have a child or an infant, or I have no idea what that looks like, it's pretty much a phase of literally laying and sleeping, and then we have crawling, and then we have attempting to take steps. So what does that look like? Okay, what do I know? Like the first phase would be, what do I know about me? What do I want to do? Do I want to use any experience or any certifications that you have currently, or any skills that you already know are going to be transferable? If the answer is yes, then I want you to just explore that. Okay, I'm a great communicator, I'm a great facilitator, and I am great with, teams. So let's start there. Okay, now we're in that phase we have identified. The next phase is crawling. How can I actually make some movement towards identifying what that would look like in the civilian sector? Again, here comes LinkedIn as the example. Okay, so 2, we want to focus on how do we get now moving? And again, here comes the powerful tool, LinkedIn. If you have LinkedIn already on your desktop or on your phone, just search the word facilitator. And you will notice that a lot of facilitators will come up. And so just explore their profile. You could even say facilitator veteran. Just keeping it simple, don't overcomplicate it. And let's just say Wendi comes up. And you're like, okay, she, was an Army veteran. She was a facilitator, 5 years ago, and she, is doing well. I want you to just explore her profile. You don't have to do anything just yet. But now in the third phase, I want you to get a little serious, just like kids, or toddlers when they're, some start at 10 months, some start at 13 months. And now their legs are a little stronger and they're going to attempt to stand up and take a first step. That's what I want you to do as well, meaning draft up a couple of notes like, hey, this is Wendi reaching out to you regarding your, opportunity that you're in. I noticed that you're working for this company, draft something up. If you want to send it to someone to review, that's great. But the key here is for you to be genuine, for you to be honest with what is it that you are looking from this person, from this Wendi girl that's a facilitator. And so when you've identified that, now you have a genuine interaction or a message that will create this connection, because that's what people are looking for. We all want to connect, and we all want to be able to have a safe space to share ideas. And so when you're at that phase and that stage and you're like, listen, Wendi, I am not a social butterfly. It's not easy for me. But if you can begin there, you don't have to do it in person just yet. I want you to begin there and encourage you to begin there, because then Wendi's going to be an open book. Oh, Wendi's like, oh, of course I can help you. Of course I can tell you all about my time. And oh, by the way, I also see that you're, in the Air Force. How cool is that? Or, you're in the Marines or in the Navy. And now we have a conversation, and not making it so much about you from the get-go, but really allowing them to just be an open book. So how can you do that without overthinking that it's about you? And so, Joe, I hope that answered your question.
Okay. Well, thank you, Wendi. Appreciate, your insight today, your advice for veterans, especially for women as they transition out, and giving us some great ideas about how they can build confidence, how they can reach out, get connections, and realize that there is a way of life out there. And, it's not all tied in. We don't have to stay in the military, stay in a bubble, and how we can grow each day, each week, each month into, the confident leader that you can be on the outside as a civilian. And so if for those of you who don't know, and I know I mentioned it earlier, Wendi has her Instagram, and on her Instagram, her LinkedIn, you will see a bunch of like shorts. You'll see longer form videos of her giving great advice that I think for my listeners who've heard Colonel Silvernair before, where he'll pop down for a couple minutes and he'll just talk about a specific leadership skill. Wendi's all over it on ways to help women gain confidence, build into that leadership, what to do on the outside. And so her snippets that she has on those channels are phenomenal. And on top of that, if I'm not mistaken, on your website, you can even book like a 30-minute consultation with just you, which I think would be invaluable for someone to just sit down with you and talk to you and, pick your brain and learn from your insight and everything you've been doing. So Wendi, is there anything you'd like to say as we head out to the listeners or anyone who maybe wants to get in touch with you or watch some of your videos?
Yes, Joe. First, I want to thank you for creating this platform. It's not an easy thing and it is time consuming. So, for that, I thank you that you are sharing not only valuable, but also connections, other veterans that are doing great things. So, I applaud you for what you're doing. Again, it's not easy technology, as you and I have experienced today, especially with the family. So we greatly
For sure.
appreciate your support, and also to highlight women. It's really encouraging for women to have men like you that are actually supporting and continuing to share, you know, even if it's small clips about how can we not only grow as individuals but continue to get after in the civilian sector because we're needed. That's the truth. Like corporate America, businesses, whatever desire in your career, in your life, you are needed. And just know that this platform right now is just, again, it may not be where you think it is, but trust me, 10 years from now, people are going to be like, I listened to this episode with Joe and, it changed my life. So thank you first. And for those of you that are listening and again are on the fence, especially if you're a woman or a spouse, a military spouse, I want to invite you to schedule some time with me, even if it's just to learn about networking, even if it's just about learning what the opportunities are out there. Because I feel like I didn't have this when I was getting out. I didn't have a podcast to listen to. I didn't have, kind of a YouTube video to watch. And so I want to invite you to schedule some time, but also connecting with me on LinkedIn would be great. A great place to start. Just say, hey, listen to your segment on the podcast with Joe, and we can, kick it off from there. But I want to encourage you to continue, stay in the fight, stay encouraged, and continue to do those scary things that you even did physically in the military, because it's just going to continue to happen. And if it's happening now, that means that you're stepping out of your comfort zone. So you're doing a great thing. Let's lean into it and not run away from it. Thank you, Joe.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Wendi.